If you've ever wondered why a woman can't seem to stop thinking about someone who barely shows up emotionally, or why she worries about a man who speaks little but acts with quiet conviction, the answer lies in a subtle but potent force: emotional detachment. Not apathy, not coldness, but a calm, intentional internal posture, one where you no longer seek emotional survival through her validation. When a man learns to live here, he becomes a psychological enigma. And puzzles make people curious. Curiosity, when left unanswered, turns into worry. If you're a new member of this channel, my king, my name is Miss D, and this is Love Talk with D. Down below, you'll find that red button, so consider subscribing if you haven't done it yet. And if you're one of my returning members, thank you so much for always showing up. Now, give this video a like, and don't forget to share it with a few gentlemen out there, some real kings, because they also need to know how to make a woman worry about them. So let's dive into today's topic. Here's what's interesting. Most men try to win a woman over by doing more, speaking more, showing up more, constantly proving their value. But in doing so, they become emotionally obvious, predictable, accessible, known. Yet the men who keep women up at night, they give something else: uncertainty. Not in a manipulative or toxic way, but in a way that makes a woman question her place in your life because she's not the center of yours. When you're emotionally detached, not dismissive, but grounded, you stop overextending. You stop over-explaining. You don't rush to fill every silence or justify every move. And the moment you stop feeding her constant reassurance, something powerful kicks in: her imagination. She fills the silence with stories. She interprets your stillness, and in doing so, becomes emotionally involved. She worries, not because you harmed her, but because you're suddenly undefined. And humans fear the undefined. This isn't about vanishing. This isn't a game of playing hard to get. It's about mastering emotional self-regulation to the point where your validation isn't up for debate. You're present, but not possessive. You hear her, but don't reveal everything. You care, but don't depend. This generates what I call emotional polarity, a space between her longing for closeness and your calm distance. And it keeps her asking, what's going on with him? That question has power. It makes her worry, not because she's scared, but because something meaningful feels like it might slip away. Psychologically, this touches on emotional contrast. When someone is always there, always expressive, we adapt to that flow. We take it for granted. But when that emotional input dips, even slightly, without warning, the brain reads it as a loss. And loss creates more urgency than gain. It's not that you're being cruel. It's that you've stopped leaning in emotionally. And that shift causes her to lean in further. On a deeper level, it's simple. A man who doesn't tie his emotional identity to a woman becomes someone she has to earn. He becomes emotionally sovereign, rooted in himself, led by direction, not shaken by emotional waves. And that sovereignty, it destabilizes her in the most magnetic way, because in your steadiness, she senses something rare, something she can't influence. And what we can't control, we obsess over. So yes, if you want a woman to worry about you, not because you're reckless, but because you're becoming emotionally elusive. Start by releasing your need to be fully seen. Stop performing. Trust the silence. Let her sit in the gap. She will chase the peace she once felt when you were near. You don't need to vanish. You just need to stop trying to prove. And when you do, when your quiet distance says more than any sentence, you'll no longer wonder if she's thinking of you. She'll be replaying everything, wondering why she can't stop and what she's willing to do to feel your energy again. There's something deeply unsettling and mysteriously attractive about someone who was always there and suddenly isn't. When you're consistent in your attention, in your communication, in the space you emotionally hold, and then you step back just enough to disturb the rhythm, you activate something instinctual. She senses that shift, sometimes before she can name it. It's in your pause between replies, in the silence after a deep moment, in the way your eyes linger less. And that space, that absence, it creates worry, not because you're cruel, but because you've introduced contrast. An emotional contrast is the seed of desire. We don't crave what feels guaranteed. We crave what might be fading. When you've shown her consistency, depth, presence, and then you interrupt that flow, even subtly, her nervous system notices. Not with logic, but with emotion. She starts to ask, did I do something? Is he pulling away? Why has something shifted? This isn't manipulation. It's a psychological rhythm. Consistency creates safety, but safety by itself doesn't create desire. Desire lives in uncertainty, in the emotional gap between yesterday's warmth and today's chill. That space becomes the birthplace of longing. She rethinks your value. She replays your words. She reads your pauses, not because you ghosted, but because you stopped revolving around her. Here's the mistake most men make. They either suffocate or disappear. Neither creates lasting emotional gravity. What does? Calibrated distance. The ability to be fully present when you're with her, and fully gone when you step away. That shift, that change in energy, creates emotional weight. It makes your presence meaningful and your silence loud. And in that quiet tension, she starts reaching. It's the same principle found in music. A beat that never changes becomes background noise. But pause it, even for a moment, and the silence grabs attention. It becomes louder than the beat. That's what calibrated distance does. It makes you stand out. Not because you yell louder, but because your rhythm had weight and your stillness now carries echo. This also aligns with a woman's emotional intuition. Women are tuned to detect the slightest shifts in tone, timing, energy. When your regular presence drops, even a little, her mind enters a loop. She starts searching for reasons, not because she's weak, but because the connection feels uncertain, and our brains hate uncertainty. On a deeper level, it's a question of balance. You're not here to be consumed. You're not her emotional entertainment. You are a man with boundaries, with depth, with mission. When you show up fully, and then withdraw with intention, not out of anger, but out of direction, you remind her that your world is greater than her orbit. And in that reminder, she recalibrates. She worries. She revalues you. This isn't about withholding love. It's about becoming the man who doesn't need to be flashy to be unforgettable. When your consistency is broken by silence, not confusion, but clarity, you become impossible to ignore. You become the thought that lingers when everything else is quiet. So don't fear space. Let your silence speak what words never could. If your presence was real, your absence will echo. Let's talk about what happens when a man pulls back, not out of immaturity or confusion, but because his focus is tethered to something higher. A mission, a path, a purpose. A man who redirects his energy into that becomes emotionally unavailable, not by mistake, but by design. And that kind of distance, purpose-driven distance, that's the most magnetic, most disarming absence a woman can feel. Because it's not immaturity, it's discipline. When your energy is claimed by something greater, your wake, your path, your inner growth, she senses that she no longer has ownership of your attention. You don't check in constantly. You're not seeking updates. You're not apologizing for being focused. And that shift, that absence of emotional neediness, it doesn't build resentment. It builds tension. And that tension, held with composure, makes her worry. Not because you're cruel, because she no longer has the access she once thought she did. Purpose, real purpose, is the highest expression of masculine attraction. It tells the world, I am mine first. That's the difference between men who chase and men who draw others in. When you're building, refining, moving forward, you create emotional scarcity. Not as a tactic, but as a truth. Your time, your space, your energy, it's not free. It's earned. And that scarcity makes her feel your value. See, most men disappear because they are insecure. They go quiet when they are confused. They vanish when they don't know what to say. That silence doesn't spark desire. It sparks uncertainty. But when you've been steady, open, present, and then withdraw with purpose, it hits differently. It's felt. It's respected. Where many go wrong is they try to explain their silence. I've been busy. I've been grinding. But if you want to leave an imprint, live it. Don't narrate it. A woman can feel when your attention is consumed by something real. She sees it in your eyes, your tone, your brevity. You're not emotionally absent, just no longer dependent. And that, right there, is power. Understand, this isn't about neglect. Women don't crave abandonment. They crave polarity, the emotional rhythm that creates anticipation. When you give her your attention fully and then pull it away rhythmically, intentionally, she feels that absence. That's when worry creeps in. Not fear of being unloved, but fear of being forgotten or replaced by your purpose. And that fear, it becomes devotion. At the core of it, this speaks to a truth that's timeless. A man without purpose lacks gravity. He floats, chases, clings. But a man with purpose, he becomes still. The world moves around him. He doesn't chase, he anchors. And when he connects, it deepens. When it distracts, he lets go. That kind of man doesn't just attract. He stays in her mind. So when you withdraw, do it on purpose. Let the silence mirror your mission. Because when your purpose comes first, your absence becomes unforgettable. Now, one of the most overlooked ways to make a woman worry, emotionally, deeply, even subconsciously, is by mastering your emotional expression. Not by becoming numb, not by shutting down, but by becoming selective, intentional with what you share. Emotional control isn't suppression. It's the ability to feel deeply while choosing when and how the world gets to see it. When a woman senses there's more in you than you reveal, she wonders. And that wonder turns into worry. Let me explain. Most men are taught to either shut down or spill everything. A man who's too closed becomes unreadable. One who overshares becomes too available. The key is in knowing your emotions belong to you. They are not hers to manage. And when you do share, it should be from groundedness, not desperation. Women feel energy more than words. So when you express warmth, openness, affection, but don't pour out every emotion, it builds depth. She senses you feel more than you show, think more than you speak. And that control, it makes her want to understand you. And when she can't, that's when she starts to worry, not because she's insecure, but because she's fascinated. This isn't about being cryptic. It's about showing your depth through presence, not through performance. Stay calm during tension. Listen instead of reacting. Smile intentionally. Remain steady even when challenged. All of it sends a message. There's more in me than you can access. And what she can't access, she desires. When you're emotionally steady, you show her that you're in control, not just of your feelings, but of yourself. You're not chasing a reaction. You're not performing. You're grounded. And that creates both trust and unpredictability. She doesn't know what will move you or what won't. So she leans in more. Let's be clear. Emotional control isn't emotional absence. It's the power to hold space, to feel without being consumed. You still feel. You still care. But you decide what's shown. That restraint, that discipline, makes you rare. It's the difference between a man who's emotionally chaotic and one who's emotionally sovereign. And sovereignty, in any form, is magnetic. Because in a world of noise, silence stands out. So if you want her to worry, not out of insecurity, but because she's intrigued, stop laying out your emotional life like a buffet. Let her sense it. Let her feel it in your stillness. Be open, not exposed. Be expressive, not exhausting. Let your depth exist. Don't perform it. When your emotions are no longer entertainment, but proof of your inner mastery, she won't just want to understand you. She'll need to. My name is Miss D, and this is Love Talk with D. Hit that red subscribe button if you haven't already, and if you're a returning king, thank you again for always coming through. Like this video and share it with a few real men out there. Let them know about this. Until next time, I love you all. Bye-bye.